News Morning with Matterall and Ron, and we have Apollo with us from BOT. He's their militia guy there. We're going to talk about the NDA stuff that's going on Reddit. Apparently, there's some thread telling you behind the scenes stuff that happened 5 years ago. We'll see what that's all about. We're also going to talk about botting and some of the war stuff going on in Malpais with Brothers of Tangra. That's bot. And then finally, we talk about CSM elections and that sort of stuff because it is the season. So we'll see how it goes. All right, guys. So you're welcome to join us inside of the channel. You can hang out, lurk, listen, or you can watch us on Twitch. Wait, I'll say hello to you people now. Yeah. We do these every Tuesday and Thursday just to kind of check in midweek to see what's going on. If news breaks, we can cover it. We get some of the people who are involved in it and make sure that we don't have big gaps in coverage all week long until we hit the shows on Thursday and Sunday. Okay, so first let me bring on Apollo here and give you a little space to talk. Who are you and why should we listen to you?
I'm Apollo. I'm the group leader for Brothers of Tangra for the four. You shouldn't listen to me because I'm a terrible human being, and that's basically all I'm doing right now. I'm also a member of NC Dot and member of wow, I forgot my corp name.
Your corp.
Finfleet.
Finfleet. Yes.
Yes, Finfleet.
Finfleet, man. Finfleet goes way back.
Yeah, all the way back to Bob days, good old days.
One of the few corps in Bob. There's only 4 corps, right? 4 or 5.
Left probably.
I think in general there was only 4 or 5 in its time. I think there was there was Reikoku, Dice, Finfleet, Evolution. Yeah, and then there's one more, the Black Omega, I think. Something like that. Yeah. There's not that many in actual Bob, and then there was a bunch that were around Bob as far as the greater Bob community was concerned. But Finfleet was one of the ones that was actually in there. So was Dice. And it's funny because I talked to some of these old timers, and they were saying like, when we were playing, they would say, "Hey, your corporation, you lock down Fountain from the north. Make sure nobody gets past you." That kind of a thing. It was corporations that would go out and do a whole thing. And now it's really, coalitions and then alliances will go and do a whole thing. So it's really changed in the name of things, and probably some more, there's probably a greater population that's doing certain things. But way back in the time when the game was smaller, it was a corporation that could handle like a task for an alliance. And that was really as big as it got. Anyway, I thought that was interesting because it's kind of the same, but kind of different. Hold on, let me unlock some people here from talking. So they're unmuted. There you go, guys. You guys are unmuted. Yeah, so Finfleet, part of Bob, and Apollo is from BOT. We're going to show a video a little bit later about it's this little propaganda video. It's really cool. We'll wait for people to actually show up and stuff. So if you're just joining us, we're going to be talking about the NDA stuff that's written in, I think it's in Reddit. We're going to talk about BOT and botting and the war that's happening over there. And then we'll talk about CSM and that kind of stuff. So it should be fun. Ron, how's everything going?
Everything is going fantastic. I would ask for more, but I'd feel greedy.
Yeah. Ron's here to make sure that this chill stream is chill.
Yeah. The Reddit thread though has just blown up like crazy.
Okay, so what is that Reddit thread and what's going on there?
Yeah, so I guess this was like some time ago. Jester Trek, right, from the blog, and he was kind of space famous. He always put out like really great opinions. he was on the CSM, and he said he was on CSM 8, and he said that after his NDA was up, which is 5 years from when he left the CSM, he would spill the beans on a lot of the back end, a lot of the kind of hidden stories and that sort of thing. And someone put like one of those exclamation point remind me's for 2 years or whatever it was, and they pinged him and said, "Hey, you know,
You owe us.
what's up? Yeah, let us know." And so he posted a thread that was like, "Okay, so my NDA's up, AMA," and he's just kind of spilling the beans behind the,
Yeah.
all these sorts of back end things.
So,
So it's really great.
so it's gotten like over 1,000 upvotes, and what else is going on there? It's gotten
Over 1,000 comments.
Oh, those are comments. Oh, yes, over 1,000 comments and over 1,000 upvotes. So it's a ex-CSM spilling the beans after his NDA runs out, and what's the nature of the beans that he's spilling? Like, what's he saying?
Well, one of the things was around Matani. Another thing was around, Dust 514, and some of the, kind of behind the scenes. And he was talking about his access to Hilmar, and that type of thing. I think, and we've already had, some CSMs, former CSMs, in our Discord said, well, eh, some of it is true, but some of it's opinion as well. So take it all with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys read it? Are you guys reading it?
I'm currently catching up now. I read some of it yesterday because it's sort of because of my time zone. It sort of was going on overnight my time, so I'm sort of catching up with it. But there's a lot of interesting insights into how CCP was in that sort of snapshot of what would it be, 2012, 11 sort of era.
Well, the NDA at the time was 5 years, so it's 5 years ago. And the NDA now, I believe, is 7 years, so it's a little bit longer than it was. So
the only reason why I'm saying it so long ago is he mentions about the Eve Dominion trail, and that was 2009. So
well, that's when it came out.
Memory serves me.
That's when it came
Yeah,
out, but
yeah,
he may
so
be
it's-
saying 2 years later he heard that the Dominion trailer was this or that. So we don't.
That's what I'm saying. It's like 2000. I think it's about 2011 CSM8 was. I'm going to triple check that now.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I guess it was a while ago, and it might not be like it was 5 years to the day. So it may be like it was 6, 7 years ago. Maybe 7. So 2012-ish. In any case,
April 2013 was the start of CSM8.
Okay, so he got done a year later. I'm totally conflicted when I talk about other CSM and stuff, because I am now running for CSM. If you didn't know that, I am running for CSM. It's official. We'll talk about that later on, but to look at this,
the crowd goes wild.
Well, no. Now we've actually, instead of Matterall being the person on the fence all the time, we now need to drag opinions out of him and what he stands for,
Yeah,
what he believes in. Now the fun begins.
It's actually a lot harder than I thought to talk about. This will sound weird, but to talk about my own opinions rather than trying to make room for other people's opinions is a little bit of an adjustment. I've never been short on opinions. I just have not really shared them and stuff. So I'm finding it's a little difficult. And even here, where there's a former, we'll put Apple Pear on here. I'm unmuting people as they come in. You can choose to stay muted and lurk if you want to, but I'm just going to give you permissions to actually talk. So if you want to, I'm kind of reluctant to talk about CSMs in back then, but I also feel like this is kind of it's actually not so bad. It's a person's point of view from the people that he talked to while he was there, and some of the things that he saw firsthand. some of the stuff that he's vetted with 2 sources. And so, the impression he's giving is this stuff's accurate. But you have to understand that Jester was not an uncontroversial figure at the time, right? He was a blogger. He was kind of a media person. I think we're very different, but he was a media person. And so what kind of access he had to people he's talking about is unknown to me. Like, was he talking to Hilmar much? I don't think so.
It almost sounded like he didn't have the opportunity to be able to talk to Hilmar.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what I got
made
from
that
the.
very clear. It was Hilmar was very gated off from the CSM back then.
I mean, Matterall. I kind of feel like we actually got to speak to Hilmar more than Jester. Like, in terms of minutes.
Yeah, and Hilmar was like, I want to do talking in stations. They approached us. Hilmar wanted to do talking in stations, which was great because we wanted Hilmar to do talking in stations for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So it worked out really well. But I have
we just didn't expect.
Yeah.
We just didn't expect it to happen quite when it did.
Yeah, I was like, oops, okay. Yeah, because it happened right in between our seasons, which wasn't optimal. We wanted to do a season premiere with Hilmar or a season finale, but it fell right in between. But I feel like maybe things have changed, right? This 5 years ago, maybe 6, 7 years ago, that all this stuff that he's talking about has happened. And I think a lot has changed at CCP, especially their financing, which might have settled some things, And I also feel like the player base is different. I think the tension overall between players and CCP is different. There's a lot of differences between what's happening right now and what kind of access you would probably get, and the relationship that CSM has built with CCP is really different than it used to be. So I feel like, yes, this is a snapshot in time from one person's perspective, and that should be honored and respected, but I don't think he speaks for the totality of the truth when he talks about the stuff that happened back there. I would want to do a non-NDA show, but have multiple people on it so that you could get a more balanced idea of like what different perspectives were happening at the time. And that would be a fair way, and it wouldn't be completely fair, but it would be a fairer way to do it. So whereas we have, sorry, let me finish with this. When we have somebody who was working for CCP or 2 people who were working for CCP at the time, you can have the angle from CCP, and then you have CSM members on the other side, and then you have a little more of a complete view. Go ahead, McLeod.
Oh no, I was just going to say that sometimes when you only have a single view from somebody who's a CSM, unless other CSM from that time get actively involved in it, like he can kind of muddy the waters a little bit with what actually kind of went along. Like, I'm not saying that Jester did do that in any way, shape, or form in the Reddit thread that he created, but it is one of those things that is possible. That you said, he was someone who was fairly controversial at the time, so it's not entirely outside of the scope of possibilities that he could potentially be,
who's
saying
going to
something that isn't quite 100%.
Who's talking to him? Like, who are the guys talking to him? Do they work for the company, or are they essentially disenfranchised from the company and taking off? That's what I worry about. It's like CCP devs are people too, and they have feelings, and they're kind of like super players. A lot of them come from the community and stuff. So they have strong feelings about the product. That's not just, I like this game and I like working on it, but when I go home, I turn it off. A lot of these guys don't turn it off, and they haven't for years. So if they're disenfranchised and taking off from the company, there's going to be a lot of bitter feelings. It's almost like interviewing people who've rage quit EVE Online and saying, well, EVE sucks because these guys have rage quit. And that's what I worry about, that there's too much of that going on. In fact, I think, didn't Rupert, what's his name? Rupert, didn't he rage quit, if I'm not mistaken?
I don't know.
I thought he had.
I was just going to say that, something that an NDA, like a NDA exploration show would do better would be, a little clearer in terms of that kind of stuff. Like, you know, having multiple CSMs with expired NDAs, like you can't exactly say something that's not actually like, you know, something that's like a half truth without like maybe one of the other CSMs kind of, or ex-CSMs kind of going, well, that isn't entirely right.
That said,
Someone
he's.
should try.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say someone should try and pin down ProGod and try and because he was on the same CSM as Jester was, and see if he can corroborate or deny or add to any of these stories. That might be a thing to do for you.
Yeah.
Well, I believe the NDAs get refreshed if you carry on terms and stuff like that. So I can't remember when ProGod's CSM kind of finished. I'd have to look that up, but
He might be CSM 9. I'm looking.
But that said, Rippard is a really great writer, and he's incredibly prolific. He just seems to. It's like water coming out of the jug for him. It seems to be so easy for him to write because he can put so much down on paper so quickly. I think he used to put out. I actually am not a reader of Rippard. Unfortunately, I don't know why. I've never read his stuff. Like, I think I might have seen a couple references to it, but I didn't read his stuff. But when I looked, I remember thinking, this guy writes a lot. He writes like 1 or 2 blog posts, and they're pretty good every day. That is a lot of writing. Okay, so answer a few questions. I think Dirk McGurk has probably got steam coming out of his ears because we're talking about this topic without him. Says Rippard was controversial in some ways at the time, but he was also one of the primary communicators with the community. Okay, and Natsunova Prime. Has Matterall CSM campaign started yet? As I look forward to hearing of his vision for the future. That is really cool. It has started. I have just posted, was it last night or this morning, my post on the forums, so you can read something there. I'm also going to be doing these chill streams for weeks, right? Twice a week, every week, up until election time. So you can ask me anything twice a week. I'll take all questions and wrestle with them in front of you live so you can see the thinking process. But the vision is pretty simple for me. It is to bring in an alternative perspective or a fresh perspective that helps look more at the game in ways that would attract new players and return, and maybe have players return to the game because there's, say, new features instead of so much balance. So that there's an imagination for things that aren't just epic PvP or aren't just PvP in general, or mad grinding for PvE so that you can make money to PvP. I think that's where we've been stuck for a while, and I want to break out of that. I would like to see new features, new gameplay, new things for new people to master, instead of an entrenchment of mix up what's already there. And those are the themes. I mean, there's a lot of different themes. One of the things I talked about was this CSM is really terrific, right? And the CSM before that was really terrific in the way that they work with CCP and the amount of information that those players are able to give CCP. But we have to understand that a lot of them are kind of coming from the same strata of EVE player, which is basically, you know, people who handle large-scale organizations and mostly in nullsec. That's just a fact. I think you had 3 people maybe that weren't. You had Sutonia and Steve who weren't, and Brisk, I don't know if you consider him. He kind of was the community guy, and I think Jin too, community guy. But a lot of Jin, I think, does more than, or he thinks a little more out of the box. But you basically had most of CSM as what we'd call like experts. And this year you have more experts coming. You have Elo, you have Vili. Help me out here. Who else is running for CSM?
And Killer's rerunning.
Killer's rerunning. Sutonia.
Cornac from Test is running.
Dunk Dinkle from Brave.
Okay, community guy. So it's again, it's the same composition. I'm not saying these people all think alike. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think their parameters of the ideas that they get, the things that they believe about EVE Online are probably similar. And I think I'm very different in the way I approach EVE Online. I think of it much more in terms of a virtual world where players collide in different ways and where players are inventive and create new sorts of stories, like Katya Sia, who sailed around the world, basically. I think that's something that's unimaginable to most of the guys in CSM, right? They could never really conceive of signal cartel. Hey, let's explore and have an ethos not to attack people, but to defend ourselves only. But all we do is explore, and that's what we do. And I just don't think that those kinds of groups have any oxygen in the CSM that we have these days. Like, I don't think they ever could have imagined those kinds of service-oriented efforts and gameplay. And I think that's creative. I think that's the kind of stuff that sparks the imagination of people who might be interested in playing EVE Online, but aren't interested in just PvP all the time. And I think we need to basically make sure that the messaging coming out of EVE is a lot more oriented towards this. There's a lot of different things for a lot of different people to do. It's a world, it's a sandbox, and it's a virtual world for you to experiment in. And I think that message needs to get out to people who are reading about EVE but don't necessarily want to get into it.
Can I not sort of interrupt, but can I bring up a thing? Because you're going into this like as the community guy, you do a lot of streaming, you interview a lot of people, you know, you come across the community as a very balanced and neutral player. Will you also go towards not pushing for but advocating for CCP to sort of increase its like Eve Pulse videos, its outreach into the community with like its interviews of like Falcon and Hilmar coming onto TIS or the Meta Show or something like that, just to sort of interact with the community directly more than what they currently do?
Well, I'm not a community guy. I think community guys are different. Let me just write this guy. He's asking how many seats are available if all the incumbents are basically going to get reelected, and there's basically about 3 seats up for grabs. So I'm fighting for one of 3 seats, basically. To answer your question, Seraph, I'm not a community guy. I think community guy looks a lot more like Brisk, right? And Brisk's pitch was, I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to talk to CCP on your behalf. And Jintan was that kind of guy before. I guess Ripard was that kind of guy before. Mike Azaria is that kind of guy. And these are guys that aren't necessarily subject matter experts. They're not, they don't know all the mechanics and nuts and bolts about how things work, but they're open to the public and they want to channel the public into CCP and channel CCP out to the public. I don't think I can do that very well. I think it's natural, and maybe I do it well, but I don't see myself as that kind of a candidate. I'm not going to be necessarily a representative for all the ideas that people have that they want to get to CCP. What I'm saying is different.
Oh, yeah, definitely not. I was more suggesting it more focused towards getting CCP out rather than you trying to, you know, channel and funnel ideas from all over the player base into CCP.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. And then to answer your question specifically, yeah, absolutely. I think what I want to see CCP do is improve their messaging to the players that already exists. And that includes scope. That includes lore that's not so ambiguous. I know they've given lore players a lot of room to discover things, and I think that's pretty cool. But then there's no follow-up to that. There's no, like, I mean, there was with Carolina Star, right? This player saw something that was happening inside of EVE that nobody had forewarned anybody about and said, there's something weird going on over here. And then there was some discussion about it. But then CCP came out and said, yes, something is happening there. Yes, you did find it. And now we're going to name it after you for finding it. And that was really cool. That was interesting because there was a lot of follow-up to something that had happened in the game. Something had been discovered. And same thing with Katya Saya. There was a mission that was accomplished that was incredible. She sailed around the world essentially, and CCP stepped in and built a giant permanent statue in her image. And that kind of thing is really, really impressive. That's what I think players outside of the game can hook into. On the other hand, You have a lot of stuff with drifters that's happened in the past, and it was very ambiguous, and there was a lot of discussion about what was and what wasn't, and it was really fun for the people who were discussing that kind of subject matter, but the rest of us didn't understand what was going on. And the mechanics didn't really work very well, so it never made it into the game to be explained. I think you see a little better effort with the Abyssal stuff. But yes, scope videos, not dev blogs, but news items that happen, those kinds of things are very rich ways for somebody who's playing solo and casual to be a part of what's going on. I don't think you leave it just to the players that like that sort of thing. I think you bring that richness out, because even PvPers like that. Look at Elise; he's a big fan of lore when it's consumable. So yeah, definitely, I would say keep that kind of stuff up. Does that answer your question?
Perfectly.
Okay. Oh, here's the thing to everybody who's watching. It's only 80 people. We'll get more people, and then we'll talk about the bigger subjects. But I just want to make this one last pitch. It might seem like because I'm on the air all the time that I'm like a shoo-in. I'm going to get a free seat and all that, and that's just not the way it is. People will always vote differently than they tell you. So I want to make sure that you hear this from me. I need to have your vote, or I won't get in. Nobody else is going to put me in. Everybody who listens to this show, whether they listen to the podcast or watch these streams, has to vote for me, or it won't happen. And that might be okay, but I'm asking for your vote, and I'm asking for your vote if you have a ballot or not, because ballots they're all over the place, and I know that people have already traded votes, and you're going to see. You're going to see the first 2 or 3 slots in all the ballots resemble each other because they're all basically swapping positions for one another. You put my candidate in your ballot, and I'll put your candidate in mine, and that way they just lock up at least 5 to 6 seats or more for the CSM. So my plea to you is, if you want to see a different perspective come into CSM, put me as your number 1 vote, and then you can vote your ballot, so that you don't have to think about it too much. So put Matterall first and then vote your ballot, and that would be fantastic. Voting is not started yet. Voting will start, it'll start in about 3 weeks, I believe. I'll check it out.
So
I've got a
Matterall.
question. Oh, go for it, Apollo.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask, I have a kind of question for you as such. Considering the sort of revelations, I guess you can call them, that that sort of Jester has kind of, laid down on Reddit to all of us. Do you feel that CCP as a organization, or as a group of a group of like-minded people, do you feel that they know kind of not how we play the game, but why we play the game and why we do what we do in the game nowadays compared to then? Or do you kind of feel like, even now, a lot of people in CCP could learn a lot more as to why we do what we do and why we play the game through, say, more media appearances and exposure and that kind of stuff?
That's a good question. I'm going to skip it. I don't think I want to answer that question.
The moderator has noted that Matterall has skipped his question. Next question.
Minus points.
That's one for Dirk, in his
his
hunt for the opinions of Matterall.
Subject of an entire show.
So someone clip that. Someone clip it.
Well, I do want to table the question, and I'll ask you to answer it later. I'll ask you if I can answer it later, because I want to get back to.
No, that's fine, dude.
Otherwise, it turns into an AMA about my candidacy, and that would just kind of be boring. So I'm going to skip that and go to Apollo. What were you about to say?
Well, I was going to ask you a question about your candidacy, so I don't think that's going to work.
Well, so let me. I'll. Generally, when I read kind of like these tell-all backstory kind of things, I don't, for the most part, I don't really like them if they're bad.
Right?
I mean, because a lot of it's going to be, biased and their own opinion about something, but I don't think, everyone needs to know every little nitty-gritty kind of detail. I do enjoy the overall picture, like of how things were created or the sort of basis of things, but you know, I don't know. I think people, and maybe it's just us and how we are, like just kind of concentrate on the negatives and look at it in bad. But you know, we really just need to look at what was created and how amazing things were, and the interesting kind of portions of it.
Kind of feels that way, right? Like you want to support CCP. You don't want to give them a pass, but you want to support them. Well, okay, so we're talking about this NDA has expired for this Ex-CSM 8 guy, Jester Trek. And he's written basically a behind the scenes answer. He's answering questions from the audience. Been over 1,000 comments now between him and the audience about what CCP is like, by talking about what was going on behind the scenes. Now that he can talk about it, he's, I guess, legally free to talk about it. So his NDA's up, so he's kind of spilling the beans on what's going on back there. And I think it's mostly, I haven't read all of it. I read some of it. Is it mostly negative, or is it just back and forth? He seems to lavish John Landers with praise, which a lot of people do.
From the amount that I've read, it seems to be more of a, rather than being positive and negative, it's more about airing the closet out. He's bringing to light good points about how people like John Lander stepped up when Eve was in pretty dire straits. Like Incarna had just released, you had the Summer of Rage and all that sort of stuff coming out, and then he also then brings up points like where the perception of Hilmar not being engaged with the community, knowing what was going on, etc., 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 and just bringing those little things to light, and then also then going over things such as what CCP were doing, why they were doing it, what could have happened, in an alternative universe if things like the Dominion trailer was the big one, where he says there's an alternate version somewhere scurried away in CCP's office that has extra footage of extra features that didn't make it into the game but were planned to be in development. So who knows what could have been developed from, if that whole trailer got released, and the positive feedback that the Dominion trailer got in general sort of encouraged that avenue of development.
Dominion was before Incarna, right?
Yeah.
So,
Dominion was definitely before Incarna.
Yeah.
Dominion kind of basically set up the whole, new solve system. It was the Dominion solve system that basically took over from the POS. Basically dropping POS and dropping player-owned stations everywhere, and whoever had the most in the system basically had the solve in the system.
So let's break that down for people who don't understand this ancient history. For some people, right?
Mhm.
So go ahead.
How far do you want to go?
Well, just explain like the relationship between Dominion and seeing features that weren't created yet, and then seeing Incarna come in and change everything with John Landers, who was the new executive producer, change the development from new features to balance passes and fixing things in the game.
So there was a lot of feature creep going on. I think the player base, it was a little bit before my time, but I've done enough kind of reading up about it to sort of know kind of what was going on. But essentially, there was a lot of people kind of wanting, a sort of a different solve system, which is kind of why and where the Dominion solve system kind of came into, with all the iHubs and TCUs and SBUs, which are sovereignty blockade units that we don't get anymore, but that's beside the point. Essentially, CCP kind of did this big Jesus feature with creating a new solve system that they launched. Selene, in actual fact, Selene was part of
CCP.
CCP at the time, and he was actually working on the Solve system. He's said adamantly a fair few times in various different places that the Solve system that was launched with Dominion was nowhere near what it should have been, but it essentially higher up scaled back the complexity of the Solve system that was being designed. And it's always been something that has really kind of annoyed him, as you know, being a staffer at CCP. There was so that came out. People enjoyed it, but essentially there started to end up getting feature creep and Jesus features occurring all over the place. Incarna was essentially a way of increasing the scope of the game because it was Incarna and then it was Odyssey, right? Basically, CCP was trying to make the game larger and more accessible for more, people, more kind of
Different types of players.
Different types of players, different people with who want different play styles. So essentially, it was kind of like they wanted to humanize the experience of Eve a little bit more by actually developing an avatar based sort of aspect of the game. It was worked on and developed quite a lot from what I remember reading about it. But when it actually released, there was a lot of the bits and pieces of it that were not quite ready. So we'd had all this build up going up towards Incarna, and then when it released, the feature set that we actually got from Incarna was so underwhelming that people revolted about it. Well, people got really, really pissed off about it, at least. And then I think with the rollout of then the was it the next store at the time or the Noble? It was the Noble
Yeah,
Exchange, right?
it was the next store. It was the first taste of microtransactions. Now, what people have got to memorize is this was in a time where microtransactions was not the norm. This was very cutting edge, very new to a lot of gamers. So in most massive MMOs, microtransactions were not the mainstay. They were the rarity. So there was a
And
lot of kickback where people were going, we pay more than the average MMO to play this game, and now you're expecting more money off us? And there was a lot of kickback over that.
yeah, because at that particular point there wasn't any alpha and omega accounts. It was basically you paid for the game monthly, or however you wanted to pay to play the game, but there was no free there was no free access to the game.
It was only a 2-week free
Aside
trial,
from,
wasn't it?
yeah, it was only a 2-week free trial. You could extend that with buddy programs and stuff like that, but not by much. You would maybe
3
about
weeks.
3
month,
to
I
4
think, was
weeks
about
at max.
yeah, I think a month was the limit you could get out of free gameplay, shall we say?
Yeah, so essentially, suddenly we had an expansion, the Incarna expansion, that was really, it was hyped up, and then when it released, it almost looked as though CCP hadn't actually been doing much at all, because it was so feature light, and then suddenly it also what occurred pretty much at the same time was CCP suddenly releasing microtransactions. So it was like it felt to the community like we've done the bare minimum for this for this expansion. We've hyped it up and had you believe that it was going to be amazing and it just turned out not to be. But now we feel like you need to give us more money, and
Yeah.
people revolted like crazy. There was
Yeah.
it was it was directed towards like the ridiculous microtransactions, like the monocles, which is where you get Monocle Gate from.
Mhm.
And that was the revolt. That was the revolt against the monument in Jeddah
Because the
that
gold,
you hear
the
about.
prices were really high, and the monocle was like $80, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was $60 for one monocle.
Right. Wasn't there a gold monocle that was like $80 or something, or was that 60?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was the microtransactions wasn't a case of like £3 or £4 for a vanity item. It was like the entry level vanity item was like £15 or something ridiculously high.
Right. There were no cheap items, right? It was all
I
expensive collectibles.
I remember specifically not actually being that annoyed by the monocle, but I was kind of a little bit put back by the fact that
Yeah.
the digital version of a normal kind of a normal nice looking shirt for your avatar was like far more expensive, and this
Yeah.
isn't due to a rarity in any way, shape, or form. This was straight from the next store, so you know they had an unlimited supply. Yeah, it's literally a digital item that you could buy a million of
So,
if you could.
so the idea is, there's a
But it was
very
like, the cost of that digital vanity item was higher than the cost of an actual shirt from a premium seller in real life.
and
I loved it.
overall there was
I loved it.
overall there was a feeling that CCP had taken a long time to take a wrong turn, in that they had promised a lot, delivered less, and then asked for more. And then I think the fourth part of the rage came from forcing people into the bodies, into the avatars. They took away the hangar view completely, which meant that your computer had to boot up just to start the game to play your space game. You had to boot up through the avatar, room, and that overheated a lot of machines because it was incredibly taxing.
It wasn't in any way optimized at all for certain graphics cards, and so it heated up graphics cards when you started up the game like mad.
Yeah.
I think the fourth and final kind of nail to in that particular sort of coffin was when the internal magazine Fearless was leaked as well.
It was an
Because
episode
that was
of,
around the time.
yeah, it was a discussion they were having in there saying, let's do a pros and cons. And they did it in a way that was stylized instead of doing it as a slideshow for a meeting, they did it in a stylized magazine so they could distribute it to one another. It's supposed to be inside, but they totally leaked that at the same time that people were really seething about, first of all, having to overheat their computers just to play the space game. Second of all, they didn't deliver much on that expansion when they had really hit home runs before that, right? And then, having basically items that they didn't want or couldn't afford. And then this memo comes out that basically says, hey, the reason that actually it says greed is good was the headline or something. And they really explained that, look, people pay a lot of money, not just for jeans, but for designer jeans. And so, jeans cost $20. Designer jeans cost $120. It's not like it's twice the price. It's 4 or 5 times the price. So they were making that case that style and status has a lot of money associated with it. And that's why the prices could be higher in the Noble Exchange store. And I think the players were, they were literally insulted by the virtual world, fashion store, basically.
I mean, I always come back to the aspect of, these digital items are called micro transactions, not macro transactions. Like, they're meant to be small. Like, you're meant to have a large amount of these things, of us, and basically them being, have them be fairly cheap in terms of cost, so they're very accessible to the player base, and so you end up, it's basically like high volume marketing, right? Or high volume.
Now remember, here's the thing. This was all new. Nobody really knew how to do it right. EVE players have been known to spend a lot of money on EVE Online. I, for instance, have all the books. I have all the magazines. I don't have all the items that they put out, but there are people who do have and would buy anything that CCP put out up to this point. There was a lot of that kind of, it was a real cult feeling of, I gotta possess more. I gotta invest more into this game that I love so much.
Well, TF2 had sort of pioneered the microtransaction shall we say, marketplace at the time. So they had gone for the very cheap keys and items, and people would buy full sets, etc., etc., etc. So Eve did the flip side. So instead of going into the next store and buying, a t-shirt, a pair of jeans, boots, 3 or 4 sets of them, is you'd go in there and buy one item, and it'd cost the same. It'd be the same cost as if buying 3 or 4 sets in another MMO. And this is where people sort of kick back, because they're introducing it as, as I said, the microtransactions. And it was like, well, hang on a second. Some of these items cost more than the gameplay per month per item. That's not micro. That's just a transaction. And it was, and this was on top of also a lot of pre-existing irritation with CCP at the time, because leading up to, from like Dominion leading up to Incarna, there was a lot of design decisions from CCP where they were focusing on bringing new features every single expansion and not fixing broken, half implemented, or things that just needed rebalancing to improve gameplay. And so when this Jesus feature, as McLeod describes it, of the walking in stations come out, people just turn around and says, so you're telling us you've spent X amount of money, Y amount of time developing this, where you haven't focused on the core gameplay that people pay money for to play day in, day out. What are you doing? Why aren't you fixing the game? This is a pile of beep, and Summer of Rage rolls on, and this is where John Lander comes into the situation. He basically U-turns a lot of the planned decisions that CCP seemed to be going down, and he went, whoa, 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 hang on, we need to listen to the community, because these are the guys that pay for our, pay the bills, keep the lights on in this place, and if they're not happy, they're not going to pay. We're not going to be here much longer.
Mm-hmm. Here's an article. If you want to know more about the Summer of Rage, there's an article I wrote with Dirk McGurk and Noisy Gamer, and the three of us sat down and went back and it did a huge evidence-based article on what the Summer of Rage was. And I think that was, it really breaks down. We even did a little, let's see if you can see it here. Open this up here. We even did a graph of a timeline so you can see just how condensed a lot of things were. There was a lot of announcements made at the same time. So you can see how they related to one another. And then we talk about Incarna and when it was released and stuff like that. And we did this on the, and we talked about, yes, here's another graph of the Summer of Rage and just how much people started to leave the game, and how many people were really, I think they lost 27,000 subscriptions at that time. So it was a 7-alarm fire. And then at the very end, we did a This Is Now, because there was a summer of what Dirk called the summer of, I'm going to forget. It was the spring of mild discontent compared to the Summer of Rage. That's what it was. And we were basically saying, hey, you think you're mad now? That's nothing. This is what EVE players did in 2011, and here's why. So check that article out. We wrote it for INN, 2011 Summer of Rage, and that was basically on the, if I look correctly, it was essentially 6 years later. So it's a good way to do it. I've linked it inside of here, so you can check out that link if you want, when you want to. And a lot of credit to Dirk and Noisy Gamer for being a big part of that article. So the thing of it is, and what we were getting to, is that there was this Summer of Rage where people were mad about Incarna, because Incarna was the first flat tire that CCP really had. They'd been really doing a great job of bringing people into the game, watching it grow, releasing expansions that really expanded the game. They made things bigger and bigger. And what happened after Incarna was they kind of blew out a tire and had a whole lot of work and money spent on a big nothing. And there's reasons for that. They were actually building a technology to make the avatars work. And they were going to use that technology, just like Unreal Engine, and sell it to other companies. And it was state of the art at the time. It did beautiful texturing. And it was also going to be used in World of Darkness. So the point is they were not the plan was to be bigger than just EVE Online, was to create this technology they could sell, make some money off that, and they could put it in a second game and open up a vampire version of EVE Online. So there was a big plan going on here. And I think there was a lot of resentment that, hey, you're messing with this game that we like, that we want to invest in for other projects, for this vampire game that we really don't want anything to do with. Some people, right? I'm not speaking for everybody. So the idea was there was a lot of anger going on. And so at that point, they decided to pivot because losing 27,000 subscriptions that quickly is terrible. And it probably alarmed them. You know, everything was, I think we have some quotes in there on how bad it was inside CCP at the time. They were panicked that they had broken this game that they had built up and it was doing pretty well. So what they opted to do was turn around and fix all the things that players told them to fix. And that was a big laundry list that not Sonic Lover, who is the other guy? The guy that ran the Alliance tournament, I should know his name. He lives right near me too. Anyone know who the CCP guy is? Sonic? No? Who's the guy who used to run the Alliance tournaments? Somebody write that inside of a chat if you can. He's one of the most famous devs ever.
Logibro was one of the big names for the Alliance tournament.
No, this guy was huge. He was actually
you're talking
Soundwave.
about Soundwave.
Thank you, Sonic.
I was like
Sonic.
I'm there thinking to myself.
Thank you. All right, guys, I got it right then. Thank you. So Soundwave had a huge laundry list of things that he wanted to take care of and to fix, and they basically went off that list and just started knocking those out one after another, and all development stopped for future stuff and went right towards all the fixing this, fixing that kind of stuff. And it was Soundwave. Thank you for putting that in there. XRT, yes, I am running for CSM. I talked about it a little bit earlier, and I'll talk about it a little bit later on. But right now we're talking about this NDA expired post that Jester Trek put on Reddit, and so people are asking what it was like back then and stuff like that. Thank you. Thank you. Votes for Matterall. Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so the idea was then that Jester says that John Lander was terrific and he saved EVE Online. And I kind of take some issue with that because I was on the other side of this whole thing. I think it's popular to say EVE was saved by switching and doing a huge amount of balanced passes, and that's what they were doing. But I kind of feel like we got stuck there. EVE's like true pioneering spirit kind of got stuck back there. And go ahead, look at this, Hoffman. Thank you for. Yeah. So is that? Did somebody?
You were the king, buddy.
Yeah.
You were
did somebody?
King. 5 gifted subs.
That's awesome.
Thank you, buddy. We appreciate that, man.
Yeah. That's great.
Nice.
Terrific. Very nice. Go ahead, McLeod. I was cutting you off.
I was just I kind of wanted to say that I kind of appreciate where you're coming from with the CCP's sort of visionary capacity was somewhat neutered at that particular point. I mean, Hilmar was very humbled at that particular point. He took a fair few steps back to figure out where this all came from, why this happened, and
he wrote a letter of apology to the game community.
Yeah, it was an open letter to the community, basically saying like, he did a lot of misplaced steps which he shouldn't have done, etc., etc.
And hubris, right? That was the big word he used.
There was he kind of he owned up to the hubris that he had up to this sort of point. I don't know whether that was him realizing, like, whether that was the particular point where he almost like took a step back from being like more involved in the game. Maybe that was the particular point where he realized being too hands-on in the game is a bad thing, because clearly it was being detrimental to the game in some way, shape, or form. So like, I don't know whether that was his cue to sort of step back and actually be more of a business CEO rather than like a what he previously was. I think when he was previously there, he was this, like, when CCP was starting up, he was the CTO, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
But
He built a lot of the
like, I think
technology.
he was I think he was wearing the CTO hat like a lot more when he was actually the CEO. And I think when the whole Incarna and the Summer of Rage and the Monocle Gate thing happened, I think he realized that he can't be a CEO in the way that he was at that particular point. So he decided to be. This is kind of conjecture from me, but like I think he just decided that he needed to be a business CTO rather than hands-on with the product. And I think that's where all of the, that's kind of where Hilmar not playing the game, not knowing the game, not being a part of it, kind of thing, comes from. Like I think he took a big step back at that particular point.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we need to wrap up this section of the thing so we can get to Apollo before he has to take off. But the point is, this NDA kind of covers a lot of the stuff that was going on at the time. It's interesting reading if you were around, so you see behind the scenes of how stuff was made. Again, consider it's a point of view of one of CSM member who was actually a blogger at the time. So that also makes me think that CCP may not have wanted to talk to him because he would write about it. So the people that did talk to him are people who knew that he would write about it and wanted to get the word out one way or the other. And that's kind of how I see that, him being leveraged by people on their way out or something. But then again, they could all have been friends, and they could all have just had these conversations that didn't have any political agenda. They were just discussing their frustrations and stuff. I wonder how CCP looks at this. I can't imagine they see this as helpful one way or another, right? Like, this is not one of the things that CCP wants to do is always stay out of it. They want to stay out of it. They don't want to be in the politics, and they don't want you to be in their business because they're running this puppet show, and they don't want you to hang out behind stage. They want you guys to see the show and to be a part of that show. Don't go behind the curtain, basically.
Well, Matterall, some might say that recent actions from Peligro might state otherwise, but in the large part, I think you are correct there.
Yeah, well, some of the messaging has been had some errors lately. We can call them. We can say, oh, what's going on with CCP? But they've made mistakes in the past. Quant also made some huge mistake when people were mad, and the players are fussy, and they are fussy and should be fussy because they invest a lot into this game, and they invest banking on it being around and the future of it being bright and growing, rather than collapsing and having their investment collapse. So there's a lot of emotion into how the game's being made and what they're expected to do. And when there's stuff that they put a lot of money and effort into gets nerfed, and when they are being outpaced by bots, there's a lot of emotion from people who play this game because there's a lot of investment and people really care about what happens. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Now let's talk about botting, since it's something that came up recently, and it's the basis, at least the propaganda basis, for the next war. Now I don't know why.
Matterall. Matterall, how do you bot then?
I don't know. The whole bot thing is really perplexing to me. I'm going to throw it over to Apollo because Apollo is from an area that is known for botting. And this is interesting because you have to really parse this out clearly. The graph that was released, or the pie chart that was released, let's go to that pie chart actually, what happened before it was released? Can somebody bring us up to speed?
Well, I think that, Elo was kind of like poking at Peligro a little bit. I think Peligro released was it a kind of a line graph?
I don't know. He had a tweet that said he banned 600 people in a wave, and then he kind of made references to some of the alliances, or he made some reference to something, and Elo said, actually, I would like to know the figures and the alliances and the corporations.
Here's that. Hold on. I want to stop you for 1 second. So Elo Knight is asking for the figures for that banning instance, right? Or was he asking for
yeah,
figures for everything?
Something like that. It was something to do
Well-
with like it would be helpful if it was if we knew what corpse it was from, and you had a load of people asking, yeah, it's really nice if we knew which corpse they came from, then we could look into those like potential renting corporations instead of an alliance as a whole. But he just gave us an alliance.
I think that's something to be very specific about because it's being
Well,
misinterpreted.
yeah.
He was asking for, because they basically Peligro came out and said the bots that have been banned and the warnings that I'm giving are to fraternities renting area and to the Imperium's renting area, right? So people that rent under those two organizations, we've banned some people from there and you're on notice. So then Elo is asking, well, wait a minute, you put us in the same group with Goon Swarm, so why don't you tell us how much of the bans were us and how much of the bans were them, so that it's not an equivalent. That's, I think, what Elo is asking for. But that's an assumption. You can ask him inside a TIS Discord. Oh, actually, don't flag him. That's not nice. Okay, but then Peligro responds with what you were just saying, Noggin.
Yeah, so basically Peligro came out with a did crunched a bunch of numbers. I think he instead of like releasing the recent a pie chart with the the amount of bans from whichever player organizations for sort of recent data, he basically just compiled all data, pretty much from the start of the game. And then he released that as a pie chart with the top 25 top 25 player organizations that have received the largest number of bans. And it wasn't just bot bans. Like, this was bot bans, RMT bans, all sorts of different bans. Client modification bans. Any kind of EULA violation, any kind of NDA violation, just basically any kind of ban of any form was basically collated into this.
Oh, so it wasn't botting bans.
It wasn't just botting bans. It's botting ban. It's all bans, like every single one.
Well, that makes a difference. So, and these are bans of people who are caught too, right? There are probably still botters out there that are not caught because they are always botting. There's always people out there botting. But here's the reason we bring this up. So that was the controversy which started the war. And the reason it started the war is because a lot of people were saying, aha, the right here, Greater Western Co-Prosperity Sphere, which are the renters of the Imperium, got caught and they're botters. And we always knew that goons were botters. And there was a lot of that kind of propaganda that was put out there that Matani came in and basically beat it back when this chart came out, because it showed that the Great Western Co-Prosperity Sphere was only 2% of the entire pie chart. So again, they're newer, right? They didn't rent territory for a long time. Shadow of Death has been at it a very long time, and Solar Citizens as well, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's not quite an equivalent. But he said, okay, you guys, we're gonna burn you. We're gonna show you. And so although there was a war that was already planned, I believe, they're putting this on as revenge for people making fun of them for having bots and stuff like that. Okay, so go ahead, McLeod, and then we'll switch it up.
I was going to say the line that Matani is kind of taking is essentially just, goons have historically been basically used as the punch, the punching bag for, botters, like a safe haven for botting, essentially. And, Matani's kind of reaction to the information there is essentially, this is the reason, this is vindication that we're not, and because of this, we're going after the people who are.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so here's the thing I wanted to point out, and the reason I want to make sure that this is clear is the big pie slices here are from Shadow of Death, Solar, Brothers of Tangra, which is where Apollo is from. These groups, and of course Solar Wing over here, these big slices, and Northern Associates too, are very much located geographically in the same area, which is the droned regions. And that is an area that has always been known as a place where you go to be left alone, which means that's probably where people who are, there may be the same percentage of bots in that area than anywhere else in the game, but there's definitely a lot more people that go there that would want to do that sort of thing because they really just want to be far away from everybody else and left alone so they can generate the ISK that their bots do.
I know it's rare that I chime up on stuff like this, Matterall, but I gotta say it's not about them, as in the dead alliances and stuff like that. It's actually about groups like NC and company. That 16% thing. That's what it's about. Solar doesn't matter. Other groups don't matter. It's really like NCPL here.
Oh yeah, sorry. I kind of I voiced that wrong. It's not Imperium going after the people who bought it. It's Imperium going after the people who have used goons as a who've been blaming goons as a safe haven for botting.
I don't know what you mean though by PL and NC.
People have used it as a propaganda tool for running on a decade now.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody's used it as a propaganda tool. You talk about Russians, you can't talk about them without somebody saying, "Oh, botters," like they've been.
Everybody did it. Defense isn't really going to work well with that because there's the giant hate erection between the two groups.
Yeah, but I think don't you think
life it's different.
You don't think it goes both ways?
It goes both ways, yes, but not at the absolute insane level. It really, you can't compare it.
Because I'm an NC, and I listen to what they say, and I don't see that inside the actual game. You might see it on Reddit from people, but I just think I don't really listen to those people anyway. So I don't see it as you guys being victims of slanderous campaigns. I think that is a little bit of a stretch, in my opinion.
That's kind of consistent, Matterall, since there was during the Casino War, for example, there were literal allusions to Mittani as literally Hitler for 9 months straight.
I don't know what that has to do with.
I'm saying the meta propaganda is different. There's a different dynamic when you go to the meta propaganda, the stuff like that between, say, NC and goons, and there are most organizations.
And I'm not gonna lie, Matterall. You are in DICE. You are in probably one of the few NC corps that are actually, not full of, what people may call shitlers.
Most of NC is pretty cool.
And that kind of thing.
Yeah, honestly, I mean,
most of NC.
There's like one or two corps in NC that you would really call shitlords, but literally most of NC is pretty cool, pretty chill. So
yeah, it's like Apollo and me are a good example. Yeah, look, we have some guys that are edge lords, but they're just like the guys in PL, and they're just like the guys in well, maybe not Goose.
Test has them. Test has people that are like that. Every alliance has people who are like.
And those are the guys that build the image of NC on Reddit. But if you're just looking at Reddit, that's a misrepresentation of any group in the game, in my opinion, because that's where people go to be heard and go to feel their big emotions, and that's where you go. That's where all the fighting is.
You are.
Yeah, and exactly.
I think propaganda is going to go back and forth both ways, but when you're on the receiving end of it, it might feel, more, I don't know, harsh, so it's just, people, making up reasons and manufacturing things to have wars, and I think that's awesome. Continued.
Yeah, well, the war is the fun part, but I think Noggin hit it on the head when he says that's where you go to be bigger than you are. I honestly think that's true. If you're posting and you're posting in dramatic ways and flamboyant ways, you're trying to get attention for some reason. I've noticed this. People who are like big posters on Reddit, when they're not somebody who's already, say, important, they chill out after they get some recognition. Whenever they get a position, like they just kind of like settle down when people start to give them attention. So I see them as, well, this sounds really bad, but I kind of see it as infants who are looking for attention until they get picked up, and they get picked up, and then they kind of get soothed. So
You could just
That's
call them
what
attention whores.
That's what propaganda is.
Yeah.
It's denouncing who your enemies or potential enemies are going to be, and saying to the rest of your group, "Haha, look, we made fun of them, aren't we so big?" And that's all it is. And it's not nice when it happens against you. I mean, I'm in test. I've seen it when the waves have been with test and when it's been against test. And I'm sure goons
Yeah.
have had the same. I'm sure NCPL get it more regular than anyone else sometimes. It's just boring on
No.
Reddit. Let's just go at them.
Well, nobody's a victim.
Now,
They're-
personally, I find, sorry, Matterall, but personally, I find most propaganda pretty hilarious, cool, and inventive. All I was trying to get across was it seemed like over the years there's been a different strain depending on the groups. There's most propaganda is just done in good fun.
Yeah, and
And
it's
for the
and it's
reasons-
hilarious. I think some of the most creative and fun stuff I've seen is propaganda, and it's hilarious. Some of it. There's a difference between edgelords and propaganda. A big difference. Actually, Apollo does some really funny propaganda.
I've only just started.
You did. You're pretty good coming out of the gate, I must say. You should post that stuff.
Yeah, eventually. I mean, I posted a few. Like they didn't get any real good attention, so I was just like, whatever, fuck it.
Yeah.
I would love to see it.
All right, there's in the Talking in Stations links channel. I posted 2 of them in there.
If you check
Well-
if you check Link's channel, I think they're in there. They look like old newspapers, but if you read the
Right.
writing, it's pretty funny.
Those
like-
are cool.
It's like the World War II newspapers.
Love it.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
I made fun of Sort on one, and then I just posted just a regular one on there for what's going on in the bot area.
All right. Well, just don't forget your dino friends when you're making propaganda.
Don't worry,
We
buddy.
love
I'm sure
that.
you guys are next. Okay.
That's propaganda.
All
That's
right.
propaganda.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think I can keep up with Test if I start doing propaganda against. If you guys have too many people that do propaganda, like I'm struggling to do one little newspaper a week.
I'm a one-man
And it-
operation.
It's a
It
legitimate
warrants
career
its own
path in
show,
test.
actually. It warrants its own show, the
I
evolution
agree.
of test propaganda.
I would
Because
say
it
the
is some of the
evolution
most
of
beautifully done stuff in the world.
I would say the evolution of propaganda in general, for not just Test, but like for everybody in Eve. Because honestly, some propaganda I've seen is fucking amazing.
Should we put a propaganda
Could be a
channel in?
series.
Let's put a propaganda
Yes.
channel in
Yes.
TIS.
Do it.
I love it.
Yes, do it, do it, do it.
Yeah, we got to celebrate some of this artistry and humor.
Yep.
You know, it's just going to end up being really
Yeah, it's going to be bad.
This is gonna be fucking amazing. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
It's a bad idea, but
because
Propaganda
Matterall always
the Reaver Sig.
let's do it right now.
All right.
Matterall
know.
always believes the best in people, so he's going to be there going, yes, these are going to be pristine artworks. You know, they're
Oh,
going to be
hell
like
no.
the things you can sort of plaster on the wall of the Sistine Chapel sort of thing. No, it's not. It's going to
This
be
is
mean
gonna be
central, but
this is
it's
gonna be
still
stuff
going to
that
be
you find on
funny
the
though.
brothel wall.
Be Reddit style propaganda.
There we
But
go.
Well,
you
we
know,
still have Artemis and I will be watching the channel, so
yeah.
it'll
Well,
be fine.
I would say don't moderate it too heavily. I mean, unless of course it starts getting like real life stuff in there. But like
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
just keep it good.
Okay, there it is. Propaganda channel now created.
Oh damn!
Let me just switch some things on here.
All right, Apollo, are you gonna christen the ship?
I am
for
gonna christen the ship right
us? Awesome.
as I find one. Ah, somebody else.
Oh,
did it.
Keisha's already there with the razor.
SC is dead.
Razor
I love you,
around us.
dude. I love you, Keisha. But
That was bad.
to be fair, that is probably one of the best bits of propaganda I've ever seen. That particular film.
I love it.
That is a good one. Yeah, that was from
fucking
Razor,
love you, Keisha.
Razor Alliance. Keisha, you should be on here. I like Keisha. He's old school, I think FC from Razor, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And it was funny.
Now he's
whenever-
is he in Bastion now, I think.
He was wormhole diving with fleets before. It was cool.
Yeah. I remember old school
the other
wormholes.
day. Go ahead.
I actually was in Adhocracy when Wormholes had just come out. They formed up, and then they were kind of very interesting. They were very interesting because they're like nobody's leader. They were just all like the same. Yeah, but I joined up with them when Wormholes were just starting out. And this is a time when Wormholes, when they first started out, there was a lot of guys that would just go into wormholes just to explore, and they would roam around and explore. And there weren't groups, there weren't people living in them. That came a few months after, I think, after more and more people started to put up towers in there. But for a long time, you could really explore, and it was kind of like pristine territory. So yeah, that was a time where you really could go camping in the woods that were wormholes. Now it's a little more pacified, or, there's definitely laws to it. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, just remember the other day when Killa was on our chill stream, and he was talking about, some of the fun things about the war, where while he was at work, he got to browse all the new propaganda from the day before, and then he was all ready for playing when he got home.
Actually, on a related note, one of the things I'm actually kind of looking forward to is the kind of propaganda sort of like a booklet. I'm not sure whether it is it. I think it's probably going to be just an ebook only. But the companion ebook of propaganda that Andrew Gurn is compiling is going to be amazing as well.
Is he compiling one?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, good. Yeah, that'll be interesting. There's some good stuff. I think Goonswarm came out with some really good stuff. A lot of it seems to be World War I oriented, like
World War II a lot.
Modern art. Is very postmodern. I don't know. Turn of the 20th century kind of time. I think there's really good stuff, especially the Russian style propaganda. It's all that. I don't know. It's pretty cool, the styles. So anyway, check that out. We put up a propaganda channel just like that, just on a whim. So you can post your best propaganda, today's or historic.
It doesn't even have to be your best propaganda.
Just to post propaganda, whatever it is. All right. I'd like to remind you guys.
At least we're not for some random reason, giving away another Titan Matterall, so it's fine.
Yeah, I know. This will cost a lot less.
It will.
But yeah, so check that out. I also want to tell people we have a CSM 14 chat area that's new for this election season. You can check that out. There's CSM links, there's discussion threads, and there's updates on whatever the news is. All that in its own area called CSM 14 chat. It's open to the public for a limited time, so check that out. Okay, there's a video I wanted to show. I'm not going to get to it right now, but I will link it in so you can see it on your own. It's a really beautiful video. I think it has some really, really, really top-notch shots in it. There's a sweeping pan shot of fleets. There's one fleet that blows up a structure and then warps out before it explodes. It's very dramatic, and it's all done without any UI and with music. It's just really good stuff. So we're not going to play it right now, but we're going to give you the link to play it, and then we'll try to play it at the end of the show. I got just a few more minutes before we're actually going to raid Ron, and you can continue this morning with him or this afternoon. But I did want to turn now to CSM candidacy. We wanted to talk about CSM and what's going on with CSM. So shall we take a look at who's running that we know so far?
Hell yeah.
CSM 14 EVE Online. So to do this, you just type in that, and you can get the informational sheet here, which is the first listing. Oh, look, at the very top, Matterall for CSM. I must be just the newest one. But if we get... How did that happen?
How did that happen?
How did that
happen?
Like
you did that previously.
How did that? Wow. Wow. The internet is telling you something.
Matterall, I just want to remind you that, according to Texas election laws, we have to give appropriate time to all the other candidates.
Right. And we will. So I just put this thing in, and that is a description of kind of get to know me for people that haven't heard the show over time. But that is all found here inside of the Council of Stellar Management Forum, and you will see that there are other people who are running for CSM. And you can check them out and find out what their positions are on things and stuff like that. Excuse me. Oh, here's something interesting. Mike Azaria was a CSM member before, and he is running again. You have Villy, FC from Test. Of course, Aerith. Aerith Still Hates You is what that one's titled. Hilarious.
The reason why Aerith titles what he titles because he's fairly confident that he doesn't need outside voters outside of the Imperium or even outside of Goons, to be fair.
Yeah. Last year he got, I believe, 6,000. Was it 6,000 votes? Which, you
Something
know,
like that.
yeah. I think you know what? Let's send Goon Swarm and the Imperium. Let's send them a message, and let's everybody vote for Matterall, #1 position, and let's get 7,000 of those votes in, and show.
They really
Nullsec.
don't want me voting for you, do they?
Show Nullsec that there are a lot of people that need to be listened to that haven't been listened to, and just because they have all other 9 locked up, all other 9 seats or 8 seats locked up, that there's some kind of symbol. So let's do that. Okay. Manic Velocity is running. He is hilarious. Andres Afanador, who I know because he's in my corporation in the Northern Coalition. And he is a really experienced player. A personal favorite of mine is Exuki for CSM. He is a wormhole candidate. Oh, look. And here is Inanimate. Oh, no, that's Inanimate Carbon. Oops. I don't know if Inanimate running again from Goonswarm, but he won't.
You know what? That'll be hilarious if people accidentally choose Inanimate, like thinking that it was Inanimate. Like,
pick up a residual vote. Yeah, that's what B movies do, right? They call themselves like Trojan War after Troy comes out, you know, a big movie. So people
you should make a tomb called Aerith with an I instead of a Y and see how many people actually.
Yeah, totally. Exuki, again, a personal favorite wormhole candidate. And Steve Vernuken, this will be his 4th or 5th year on the CSM. And the judge is running again. Zanuria is running. He was a CSM a year ago, but he was not on last year. Faley Fryer, I think he was just on a Talking in Stations show.
Do you think do you think Zanuria actually got his an increase in the resolution of the textures for boots that he wanted the last time he was on?
Somehow I don't. I think those were 2 different things. Was it resolution, or he wanted them not to be high heels? He thought it was very sexist that women couldn't wear flats in Eve.
I think he wanted the heels gone, but he also complained about the resolution of them, saying that it was subpar.
Yeah.
Because I just found it the most ridiculous thing.
So Fear Vanya, I think might be, let's see. Oh, withdrawn. Sorry. Oh. It's like a roller derby. That one got knocked out of the ring.
Paperwork was not up to scratch, I imagine.
Here's Dunk Dinkle.
Or he actually... Yay!
He puts out a lot of videos, and he's been on this show a few times. He is from Brave, and he's a fun guy. He also did a speech at Eve Vegas saying how to be a leader without having to jump in front of everybody and yell, which is a good thing. You should look for it. So, and then we get into, here's some CSM, some people who got in earlier. I'm sorry, I'm not saying your name because I don't necessarily know who you are. So please go here and read all these yourselves. Liz Lizard Breath, I think she won the avatar from us, actually. So she's a fan of Talking in Stations.
So if she doesn't give, her vote to you, then I think that's pretty poor on her.
Yeah. She's one of the early votes, early people in, it looks like. And then there's the Mute and Deacon Wideneck. I need to read all this myself because I need to figure out who I'm voting for as well. But yeah, I am also on that list now, and it's something that I thought I would never do for various reasons. One is who wants to be restricted by an NDA, right? And 2 is I'm a media personality. What do I really have to offer? And 3 is I hate flying anyway. I only fly for work and vacations. So why would I give myself an extra 2 flights in a year? Because, and I'll start with the third one and work backwards if it's okay. One is the whole thing about going to Iceland, and I don't really want to go to Iceland. But I want to be at that table, and there's a big difference. So I think a lot of CSM want to be a part of the Eve development. People who are running for CSM want to be part of Eve development because it's a seat at the table, and there's only 10 seats, and it's taken seriously, which is great by CCP. So who wouldn't want to do that? But I also feel like there is a part of it that is a feather in your cap. It's like It's like the prize at the end of your career. And that's why I think a lot of CSM burn out and take off, because they've kind of achieved it and they can go. And I'm seeing it completely differently than that. I see it as a job. And I see it as a job that you need to prepare to do well, and it's going to take a lot of energy to do it and that sort of thing. And what changed my mind about the flying is my wife said, get over it. She basically said, just get over it. Imagine yourself already at the place. Would you want to be there? And at that point, I thought, well, okay, yeah, so I'll suffer the flight. And then the second thing is, besides, they have drugs, so you can knock yourself out. Who knows? What was the second one? I'm going to have to replay the video to figure out like what the other things were that I had to get around. Oh, the media thing. The media thing, right? Like, why would the media personality in CSM, does that make any sense?
Because you're not Scion, of course.
Well, yeah, that's non-Scion rule. But look, here's the case I'll make for being media, but also being somebody that should be in the room. It's not that I am... I'm not really a typical media guy. I don't consider myself like a media guy. I consider myself as a student of the game. I look at the game, I analyze it, and I try to produce content that is based on other people's stories. So it's really not about me. It's about telling the stories that make EVE Online interesting and looking for them. But the whole time that I've been doing that, I focused on where I naturally was, which is the large scale epic fights, and a lot of the smaller stories that are all sprinkled underneath all that. And what that's done is it's brought me into a crossroads, which is what Talking in Stations is, a crossroads for a lot of different players. You have Elo Knight talking directly to Harvey Skywalker from PL, talking to Sort Dragon, talking to the Matani, talking to Lady Scarlet, and they're all in Talking in Stations public, not duking it out, but basically sending messages and stuff. And I talk to a lot of these people, like Naros and Wind Spirits, Gobbins, and all these people. I talk to them very, very often. So it's not like I'm saying elect me because I write a blog or make a podcast or have a newspaper. It's more like I'm in touch actively with a lot of the players that make things happen. And so I've, over a long period of time, developed trustful relationships with people and been able to hear about a lot of the progress that's being made in EVE Online at the player-made level. It doesn't make me an expert in anything in particular, but it does allow me to have a contextual image of EVE Online played at the very high levels, and then also played at the very medium and sometimes low levels, because I have friends that are starting the game that I play with, and a lot of times I play solo and by myself, and a lot of times I'm talking to people like in Signal Cartel and stuff like that. So it's not, there's nothing that dominates my life as a certain thing, and I don't consider myself necessarily a media campaign. However, it would be hard to say that people aren't voting for me because they heard about me inside the game. That's not true. So in that sense, I am a media candidate, but I'm just not a typical one, I don't think. And then the last one is the NDA. Why would you want to strap on an NDA? Maybe that's not the right way to put it. Why would you want an NDA to stop you from talking about certain things? Because that will nullify your ability to predict what's going to happen, because you already know and you can't talk about it. And that was the one that I thought I would never get past. But I think in the last year, a lot of our work that we do here with McLeod and Ron is to tell other people's stories and to let other people talk about where they think it's going to go. And so it's really not going to be hard not to talk about where the game's going to go. Besides, we don't like spoilers. And if it's not in the game, why talk about it? You know, we want to talk about things that are in the game that players are doing, and that's been our focus. So I don't feel like I'm not going to say, oh yes, this is going to happen. You watch, it's going to be great. Like, that is not something that appeals to me to do in the first place. And so I think the NDA stuff would be very easy to handle. What do you guys
like
think?
how you predicted how amazingly expensive those implants were going to be, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not wanting to give you a little jab there, but, you know,
Yeah, I got that one.
he's not good at
100%.
predicting stuff,
100%
but he's good at
wrong.
being able to understand people's perspectives and give other people representation. He's a
Yeah.
good aggregator.
Yeah, maybe that was my last stand, was losing what 30 billion because these injectors were going to be, or these boosters were going to be so expensive. They were not expensive, so I got that totally wrong.
Not like that's going to haunt you for the rest of your career or anything.
Well, as long as you keep reminding him of it, McLeod.
Oh,
Hey,
I'm very
that's
public
why
about
I'm
that.
here.
Very public about that mistake, right?
Just to humble you every so often. That's all.
Yeah. Okay, last part of this thing. I don't think we got enough Apollo time, so I'm dragging you back in.
Oh.
Yeah.
Get your ass back in here, Apollo.
Yeah, I want to
Somehow I
hear.
escaped.
Tell us what's going on in Melbase
Well,
or Etherium Reach, wherever.
well, the whole drone lands essentially. But so, as long as many of you know, some of you guys have been watching, some of you have participated. There's the war still going on out there in Etherium Reach and the drone lands. We've still got Unspoken and everybody fighting, and now we've got Goons. PL test comes up occasionally. We got NC Horde, and it's honestly turning out to be good fun. I think our last major engagement. Actually, I think our last major engagement was over a Sodio out in Spire, and literally Goons just got murdered.
Mm.
It was a really good fight. I was at work though, but I saw some of the footage of it. It was really good. The previous major engagement before that was LXQ, where we had all the iHubs and everything come. Oh, we had an iHub coming out that belonged to I think it was Unspoken,
Yeah.
and basically the
That's
key
super
important.
important.
The key importance of that system.
Yeah,
That
please.
system is really important because that's one of the systems that you have to take. You can't go through any other system to go back and forth to Jita with. That system is very, very important strategically, and they were jamming it.
It's a supply line. Okay.
Right.
Now, I thought that you guys, Brothers of Tangra, had a keep star in that system.
No, we didn't have a keep star. We were joking about putting one down, but we didn't actually put one.
Okay. So it was the iHub that belonged to your enemy.
Right. The iHub belonged to Unspoken, and everybody max farmed for it to go take it out. Obviously, local got to 10% tie dye, which is always fun. It was actually while you guys were having the meeting with Lady Scarlet and all talking about renters and all the empires.
Oh, really?
I was watching that intently as we were doing the show. That looked like such a fun fight that was happening.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. We had horde drop supers on goons. It was pretty good. We had goons slugging it out with NC and horde.
Did you say that was LTAC 7?
No, that was LXQ.
LXQ. Oh, I had it wrong. LXQ. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is Etherium Reach.
Right.
And
so,
yes, this system right here. It's right on the border of the Forge.
Yes. Which is where one of the goon SIGs lives in Paula.
Right next door.
Yeah, I do believe that's what's the name of that group?
They live in Uemon.
Oh, is it Uemon? I'm sorry, I thought it was Paula.
Yeah,
I apologize.
Uemon, yeah.
Where's Uemon? Let's see.
Right next door.
Right
to
next
Paula.
door. So here, so it's 2 jumps over. Oh,
Yeah.
so this little area, basically Southern Forge or right into Etherium Reach, because they're connected. That's where that battle happened. So the iHub that belonged to, who was it again? Unspoken?
Unspoken, yes.
Destroyed. Where does that leave that system?
Leaves that system just holding a TCU. What's nice about it is the jammer is now offline because they obviously can't put that up. And what was really a problem for us is that they were using that system as a jump bridge point for the goon fleets. So any goons reinforcements they were getting were coming straight through. They'd come from Umon, hit the jump bridge, and be in direct striking range of most of our space.
Yeah.
So now that with that's gone, their highway that they've got going on is actually, been pretty much snapped. We started snapping all of their jump bridges because, making it harder for goons to get out there is, what we want.
Yeah. So I'm pointing at it here. I don't know if my mouse is visible. I don't think it is. But yeah, so LXQ right next to the Forge border of Pala, and 2 systems over is where goons are based, I believe, or the Imperium SIG is based. What's that Imperium SIG that's there?
I think it's, oh God,
Sons of Liberty or
This
something?
is funny.
Liberty Squad. That's it.
Liberty Squad, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was one thing I was confused about. So um, when I looked at the fight, right, and then I thought the timer was going to be big because I think it hit Sunday, right? And I thought it was going to be big because the previous fight was big. It was like over 100 billion between a couple of systems. And I thought that fight was going to be big, but when I was looking at the timer was Pandemic Horde and it was reinforced. So did you guys have it and then it got reinforced, or?
No, the original time, we didn't actually form for the Horde one. Horde dropped theirs right after we took over, after we snapped the LXQ.
Gotcha. Okay.
The unspoken one, I should say. Sorry.
That is very dramatic. So where do you think the Imperium is going to deploy north as was leaked, or do you think they're going to maybe switch their plans, if those were their plans, to come over to where you are, to really, as they say, glass the rental region, the income base of their enemies?
See, I don't know. I'd like to be able to answer that question. I really would. I'm sure most of my people would like the answer to that question as well.
I mean, we already
We're
burned it down once.
burned what down?
If you're referring to all the stuff around UMON,
No, we're referring to as in Malpace drone layer.
Yeah,
okay, that now.
Malpace.
Yeah, no, we're not. So basically, it's everyone's sitting there with bated breath, waiting to see if goons are going to hit tribute or if goons are going to hit Malpace. I feel like I personally believe they would hit tribute because that would have more of an impact than it would on Malpace. But at the same time, it's they've also been spending a lot of time building up this renter program they've got going, and one of the best ways to do that is to take out a renter empire.
But I don't think they can rail publicly against renting and then inflate their renter numbers. That would be the wrong direction,
No,
especially
it
since
seems like, from my opinion, it would make sense that they hit tribute and do what they did in the last campaign, which is like headshot and glass tribute as best as they can, while that would force NC and PL and friends to pull back from Malpay while the Sixon squad stay there and do what they do, because the Imperium are big enough to do. That's the problem.
I don't know. I think if goons invade tribute and everything like that, they're gonna want the SIGs to help. I don't think they're gonna leave the.
you think it
Do
works
they have
both
to
ways.
invade, or do they have to just sit there and look like they're going to while NC pull back from Malpay?
Well, one of the things you got to realize is we also have, we've been installing infrastructure. So we have our jump gate road, we've got our beacon roads. So it's very easy for us to, transition back and forth through the region now. So basically, all I have to do is park on the edge of the region and just be like, okay, which one are you attacking?
Yeah.
You can
To a point,
still,
yeah.
yeah,
It's more
you
about
can
the
still
supers and
cause problems
titans.
with that.
It's more about where are your supers and titans, and you're not putting caps that much through those gates, unless you have a lot of those.
No, that's what you have your beacons for.
Yes, but what we're saying is that if the goons do the two front warfare, so they park
yeah,
their
no, I
super
got you.
fleets in tribute and leave the Sigs in Malpay, where is you as the defender where you have one super fleet, where do you put your supers now?
No, that's fair, and I honestly don't have the answer to that question.
But this brings up the question that's happened a lot, especially when it comes to the drones and when you're attacking drones. Or, I mean, I suppose to a point when you're defending it is a great advantage. Is why is there a massive swath of space which has nowhere that you can assault it properly from? Like, there's no NPC space anywhere near or in the drones that make it any kind of vulnerable. And that's why you've just shown you can cut off the Imperium 6 quite quickly.
The other question is what skill yourself going to do in this situation? Because they're, you know, shall we say, fairly close to this sort of conflict? What's their interest?
Well, I look at it this way: Skill U is actively engaging goons while they're out there, and goons are actively hunting Skill Yourself's renters and stuff. So I really believe Skill Yourself will end up having to fight, again.
Well,
Getting
that
drawn in.
in theory could answer the two-front warfare, because an NC and PL in theory could pull back towards tribute if goons deploy there, and in skill you could move their super fleet up towards Malpay area to sort of cover off the SIG problem.
Agreed.
Possibly, depending on the Diplo, there's a load of possibilities in that sort of situation.
Absolutely. And then I don't even know if HK is even relevant anymore or what they're doing. I haven't heard from them in a while. I mean, remember they're tucked away up in Cobalt Edge.
They're just busy ratting.
Yeah, and losing Nixes
Yep.
pretty regularly now.
Well, something else that's changed since the last invasion that Goonswarm did into the north in 2018, things were very different. I think now you have some capital nerfs that make it a little trickier on both sides to engage fully with their super capital fleets. You have limited repair capability now from the force auxiliaries, and you also have, well, I don't know if insurance payouts are a big deal, but those have been reduced. And finally, you have these Sino-jammers that are incredibly powerful right now to be able to lock out enemy fleets from jumping in. So it's going to be a real war over the jammers and the iHubs.
I personally think, in regards to the insurance pay, is you're not going to see as many casual dread bombs that are just we lost 200 dreads, who cares? Those sorts of dreads and faxes that you chuck into a meat grinder pre-nerfs are probably going to be thought about, a little bit more about, is it worth committing these forces into this, knowing we're going to lose these, and then having to eat the cost of them again?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. The thing is, the dread bombs are going to be a little more tempting, I think, because dread bombs can now effectively take out one or two Titans. There is no repair capability to protect all your Titans anymore. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think we're going to see dread bombs used a lot more effectively. It's just
Right.
not going to be, let's just drop dreads and see if we're going to kill this thing or not. But I do believe they will be used a lot.
Yeah, maybe in even strike groups. But again, it depends on a lot of things, and I don't think that the money involved is going to make, because right now if you get a dread bomb going and you get it all destroyed and you've insured it properly, you get a lot of that ISK back, and so you can do that over and over again without really losing a lot of ISK. But since that's nerfed, that might come into play a little bit, but I don't think it'll be overwhelming. I think the
Yeah, I
big
don't think
story,
it's
yeah,
I don't think it's going to be enough to stop dread bombs from happening, quite frequently.
right.
I think if somebody puts a Titan on the field, you're going to get dread bombed.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be interesting to see this. This war feels to me a little more fluid than the last one. The last one, it was it's who gets on field first with how many, and it really dictated the momentum of the fight. Also, there were some tactics. Actually, I don't want to take anything away from Imperium, who tactically were better than NC Dot, and Killer B will tell you that because they timed their shots better. They double tanked their Erebus and avatars, and they brought up some new improvements to that kind of combat, which allowed them to be even more effective than they would have been with their superior numbers. But I think this time it looks to me like the changes that have come through over the last few months, again recommended by CSM, I think those will be making the battles a little more fluid. There might be some more give and take and unexpected results.
And not only that, what we also have to realize is that after that last war, we actually learned a lot. Yeah, we've picked up a lot of the goon tactics, so it's like, okay, well, everyone's going to start double tanking their, Erebuses and avatars now. So that's something that's going to be said for it. We're also going to be looking at, is it worth dropping on this one structure? Is it, or are we going to actually be able to kill anything? Or should we just drop dreads, go for max gank and call it a day?
Yeah. How much of this war, if it happens in the north, is going to be degrading each other's military capability? Like, how much will you say, let's seed some structures so that we can actually degrade them, take out 5 or 6 Titans at each battle or something like that? And is that worth it?
And in that aspect, where I can see Dreads becoming very effective is the catching the disconnected Titans at random safes and then committing a strike force in to kill them. That's where I think the Dreadnoughts are going to see their most effective use.
Yeah.
I also wouldn't discount the North because this isn't going to be a numbers versus numbers thing because the North is in a defensive position and they do have Sino-jammers on their side, and there's a lot of things on their side to really even it out. And I think, if this is the kind of battle, that it's going to be, fantastic. I think it's going to be great. And I think the North are really going to shine in this, to be honest. That's my opinion.
That's your prediction?
There's a massive reason, like the Imperium. Well, there's loads of reasons the Imperium didn't go in for tribute last time, but one of the contributing factors last time was actually geography. Geography of moving from Pureblind to tribute, and the way that tribute's set out in like a ring, it's just like one long pipe. So you're fighting down a pipeline. I remember when Tess was fighting in the tribute war, when NC and PL were invading, NC had a very hard time initially getting into tribute and getting a foothold, but once they did, that was more of a consolation at a time after that, as I remember correctly. But that's going to be the big one. Are they going to come through low sec or are they going to come through Pureblind if they do go for tribute there?
It's very. I think that's a very good point. After World War B, the Casino War, NC decided they were going to take out CO2 and their allied test by extension. NC did not do very well for the first month of that war, for precisely the same reason you say.
That with the new Sino-jammers.
Right. Interesting point. Well, I'm glad you guys have tuned in. Now you're 120 people watching this. I wish we could talk about EVE Online all day long. I would love to, but I've got to run to do my day job. And so what I'm going to do is move everybody over to our partner here, Ron, who's going to continue the stream, and we can continue the discussion there. So, yeah. You have to have a day job, Bad Spam. I want to say thanks to everybody that showed up today, and we'll do this again on Thursday. But I especially want to thank Apollo for showing up and sharing his video. Let me actually get that video for you now.
To be clear, it's not my video. It's one of my members' videos who made it.
I'm looking forward to seeing that video because I was on the other side of that.
It's quite a good video. And there it is. I just put it in there. I'll actually put it in links on Discord if you're there. And Ron, are you going to keep this channel open?
Yeah, we're streaming live already.
So just stick around.
And just want to throw this out there really quick. If anyone wants to be a cameraman for this upcoming war, just ping me on TIS Discord, a Cloaky Interceptor. We're looking for cameramen.
Matterall, your video's not working.
Oh, yeah. Is it...
let me do I wanted to say that I also wanted to say that if you want to be a cameraman and you already have like Discord Nitro, that will be even better.
Why? What's Discord Nitro do?
It allows you to be able to stream to sort of someone to basically allows you to stream to somebody via a Discord call in 1080p 30 FPS.
Oh, great. I guess we got to do Nitro. Oh, man, this is going to be great. We have a war coming up. We have a CSM election. So there's politics and war and struggle and propaganda. We have a new propaganda channel. Check it out on Talking in Stations Discord. Thanks, everybody, for showing up today. Stay tuned. Stay right where you are. We're going to move over to Ron's channel and hang out with him for the rest of the day. Okay.
Thanks, Matterall.
Thank you, Apollo. McLeod, can you do the raid thing?
Oh, of course.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And here's a leaving thought. I thought the summertime was the quiet time.
Right?
I know, that's totally changed, hasn't it?
Not anymore.
2018, 2019. Let's see if we can beat 2018. Okay.
Yeah, Apollo,
Summertime
feel
is the
free to hang
burning
out.
time.
Yeah, I'll chill.
Cool.
Yeah, hang out. Ron's great. Super casual.
I'll hang out with my test bro.
Yeah, I'll be
Right on,
listening in
man.
too. My test bro. Are you in test? Do you have a spy in test?
God,
I
spies
always
everywhere.
say that I'll give any intel that is needed for test to win. I am not afraid.
Okay,
Ron.
we're ready, by the way, here, Matterall, so we're good to go.
All right. Is there anything I need to do or?
Nope. You're
All
all
right.
good. I can just hit the button and you can go offline. It's all good.
Oh,
If you
terrific.
could lose the war
nice.
that's coming up, though,
Whoa. Easy, man.
All right. Good luck. Have a good day. Bye.